If you've ever embarked on that really ambitious journey of mastering a new language, you definitely know the moment, that moment of just sheer panic.
Oh, I know the one.
You've studied the grammar, you've aced the vocabulary quizzes, you feel pretty confident, and then you hear two native speakers just chatting on the street.
Or even on a TV show, suddenly it's not a language anymore.
It's just noise. It's this continuous high-speed blur. They sound like they're talking at 100 miles an hour, and everything you thought you learned just dissolves.
That phenomenon is the ultimate barrier, isn't it? It's that realization that the carefully articulated, slow, neat language from your textbook is, well, it's a fiction compared to the reality of how people actually talk to each other.
Absolutely. And that universal frustration is really the jumping off point for today's deep dive. We are going to tackle that challenge head on, looking at some really sophisticated technical, psychological, and even algorithmic solutions.
Yeah, and we've pulled together a fascinating stack of sources today. We're diving into academic papers, conference proceedings from places like Technological University Dublin and the Singapore University of Social Sciences.
So we're looking at everything from speech processing tech that literally warps time to foundational theories like comprehensible input.
And even how cutting-edge AI is being used to decode the anxieties of modern adult learners.
Our mission today is really for you, the learner. We know you want knowledge quickly, but you also want it thoroughly. So we're going to distill the most potent nuggets on how to maximize your language acquisition.
It's all about arming you with the right tools and, just as importantly, the right mindset. Everything from slowing down native speech without that weird distortion to how to conquer your own language anxiety.
It's a synergy then, tech and psychology.
Exactly. And to start, I think we have to look at the technology that makes the invisible, well, visible.
Okay, let's start there. Let's analyze that auditory barrier. The whole phenomenon of fast speech. We've established that native speakers sound fast, but you said earlier it's not purely about speed, it's about efficiency. Can you break down the physics of what the researchers call NSNS speech?
Certainly. So, unlike writing, where we have nice, neat spaces between words, speech is this continuous, unbroken flow.
Right.
In relaxed native-to-native dialogue, that's the NSNS speech speakers, are basically expending the minimum energy necessary to be understood by their partner. Efficiency is king, not perfect articulation.
And the research gave a really great analogy for this.
It did. The difference is like printed block letters versus a hastily scrawled signature. A signature works because of the overall outline and the context, right? Not because every single letter is perfectly formed.
Okay, so if the native speaker is scrawling, what are they doing to their words on a phonetic level?
They're maximizing something called co-articulation. This is a huge concept. Co-articulation just means that while you're making one sound, your mouth is already getting into position for the next sound. It's lazy speech, in a good way.
It's efficient, future-oriented speech. And in that flow, phones, the sounds get elided, meaning they're left out entirely or they get eroded and the boundaries between words just get blurred. It's like the ink overlapping on that signature.
And the result for you, the language learner, is just devastating comprehension loss. You're listening for those neat block letters, and what you get is a scrawl.
Precisely. And for decades, if you wanted to slow down audio to analyze this, the tech was just awful.
Oh, yeah, you'd get that cartoonish effect. The voice would get super deep, the pitch would drop.
It sounded like a monster, and it was totally uninstructive because your brain was so distracted by how weird it sounded, you couldn't focus on how they said something because it sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well.
So the key was to decouple the speed from the pitch.
Exactly. And this is where the breakthrough comes in, from the Dublin Institute of Technology back in 2001, a tool called DIT Call Slow.
Okay, so tell us about its main feature. What was the secret sauce? The breakthrough was a unique variable slowdown facility for speech recordings, but without the tonal distortion.
How? I mean, without getting too deep into the digital signal processing weeds, how does it actually stretch the time without changing the tone?
Okay, think of it like this. The old way just slowed down the playback rate of the whole sound wave. That naturally lowers the frequency, so the pitch drops.
Right.
This time-scaling algorithm is much smarter. It chops the speech up into tiny, tiny segments, and then it stretches the little bits of silence between the sounds, or it subtly lengthens the vowel parts.
Ah, I see. So it's manipulating the silent spaces, not the sounds themselves. The tone stays the same.
You've got it. The playback time could be expanded, literally giving you more time to process without that horrible drop in pitch. It allows you to concentrate on how something was said, not just scramble to figure out what was said.
I like how one of the researchers put it. He said it allowed time to be spent with the signal. It's almost meditative.
It really is, and their internal research found a kind of sweet spot for this.
What was the optimal speed?
Most students preferred 80% speed. It strikes a great balance. Still sounds very natural, like a real human, but it gives your brain enough extra time to process everything.
But you could go much slower, right? Down to 40%. The researcher said it sounded drunk or exhausted, so why go that slow?
That's for deep analysis, not for
Yeah.
general listening practice. At that speed, yes, it sounds less natural, but it's incredible for highlighting the natural prosody of the speech.
The rhythm, the stress, the intonation patterns.
All of it. At that hyper slow speed, your attention is pulled away from the meaning of the sentence and forced to focus entirely on the music of how it was spoken. It's like putting language under a microscope.
That makes a ton of sense. It turns it from a communication tool into a diagnostic one. So what kind of secrets did this microscope reveal?
Well, there are those two great examples from English. In one of their recordings, a native speaker said, difficult, not difficult.
They just dropped a syllable.
Dropped it completely, but at full speed, your brain just fills in the gap. You'd never notice. It only became obvious when they slowed it down to 60%.
So the tech reveals the shortcuts native speakers are taking. The shortcuts your brain is working overtime to hide from you as a learner.
Exactly. Another great example is assimilation. Native speakers often say "te-em balloons" instead of "ten balloons."
Wait, why PM?
Because the B sound in balloons is bilabial. You make it with both lips. So your mouth, in its efficient laziness, just changes the N to an M to get ready. M is also bilabial. It's easier to say.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
And you'd never hear that without this kind of tool.
You wouldn't. And this is especially huge for learners of English because of our insane vowel system. We have 12 pure vowels, 8 diphthongs.
So 20 vowel sounds. And if your native language is, say, Spanish or Japanese, you only have 5.
Right. So catching those tiny differences is incredibly hard. Not to mention the dreaded schwa.
Ah, yes, the centralizing effect, the oo sound.
The sound. The A in about, or the to in today. It is the single most common sound in spoken English. It's a reduced, unstressed, super efficient vowel. And if your language doesn't have it, hearing it and making it at full speed is almost impossible.
So slowing it down makes these nearly invisible mechanics of English suddenly audible.
Exactly. And they realized this applied beyond English too, especially for tonal languages.
Like Mandarin Chinese.
Right. This is where focusing on prosody gets really powerful. In Chinese, the syllable ma can mean mother, hemp, horse, or to scold.
And the only difference is the tone.
The only difference is the tone. Now, if you're an English speaker, your brain is trained to listen for intonation at the phrase level, like, does this sentence go up at the end to signal a question?
So you have a cognitive blind spot for tone at the word level.
A massive one. The research showed that by slowing down Chinese speech, sometimes all the way to 40%, you force the listener's brain away from trying to find the meaning and toward hearing the actual tone contour of each word.
So slowing it down almost disembodies the speech. It makes the tones themselves the most obvious feature because they're stretched out in time.
That's the key insight. You're using time manipulation to bypass a core cognitive bias in the learner's brain. It's brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. But that's perception. What about production? That brings us to the second tool, articulate.
Right. Articulate was the other half of the equation. A tool focused on giving you automatic, objective feedback on your pronunciation, specifically for those tricky English vowels.
How did it work? How did it give you that objective feedback?
It used a classic linguistic tool, the vowel quadrilateral. It's basically a map of your mouth space.
Okay.
So you, the user, would say a target vowel into a microphone, like the short in bit, and the software, in real time, would plot where your sound landed on that map.
So you could see your pronunciation, not just hear it.
Exactly. You'd see a dot representing your vowel, and you'd see the target area you were aiming for. If you accidentally said E, like in beat, you'd instantly see your dot land too high and too far forward on the chart.
That's so powerful. It takes the guesswork out of it. It's not a teacher saying, no, that's not quite right. It's a visual, objective fact.
It is, and the researchers noted its potential goes way beyond language learning. It could be used in remedial therapy for people with speech or vocal disorders.
So you have this amazing synergy. DIT call slow helps you see the scrawled signature under a microscope, and articulate gives you objective feedback on whether you can copy it.
It's a full feedback loop designed to lower frustration, which, as we're about to discuss, is absolutely essential for actually acquiring a language.
Okay, so that tech deals with the how of speech, but now we need to dig into the material itself and how our brains absorb it. And the first big idea is authentic input.
Yes, authentic native-to-native material is, well, it's non-negotiable if you're serious. The problem with traditional textbook stuff is that it aims for this unnatural linguistic perfection.
And that actually hurts you in the long run.
It really does, because real conversation is messy. It has false starts, hesitations, people correcting themselves, even native speakers making grammatical mistakes.
All the stuff that gets edited out of a textbook dialogue.
Right. And if you're only exposed to that hyper-perfect, broadcast-quality speech, you start to develop an unnatural perfection in your own speech. And some researchers suggest that can actually disrupt communication.
Wait, being too perfect is a problem. That seems totally counterintuitive.
I know, but think about it. If a non-native speaker sounds like a perfectly programmed robot, it can be a bit unsettling for the native listener. It doesn't sound human. Authentic material prepares you for the messiness of real language.
So authentic input is the container, but the key to actually absorbing what's in that container is a foundational theory. Comprehensible input, or CI.
CI is basically anything in the target language that you can mostly understand. The sweet spot is somewhere between, say, 80 and 95% comprehension.
And this is central to Stephen Krashen's work, right? His famous I+1 idea. Can you really unpack that for us?
Sure. The I is simply your current level. It's what you already know. The +1 is the new stuff, the input that is just slightly above your current level.
Go to Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. If the input is just I, you're bored. You're not learning. If it's I plus 10, you're overwhelmed, you panic, and you shut down. That +1 is where the magic happens.
And Krashen says this input has to be three things: compelling, rich, and abundant.
Yes. It has to be interesting enough that you actually want to pay attention. If you're hooked on a story, you forget you're even studying. That's compelling. It has to be rich, so in context, not just a list of vocabulary. And abundant, you need a lot of it.
This leads right into his really core distinction between acquisition and learning. This is fundamental.
It's the most critical distinction. Acquisition is subconscious. It's how a child picks up their first language. It leads to real fluency. Learning, on the other hand, is the conscious stuff studying grammar rules, memorizing verb charts.
And Krashen's argument is that conscious learning doesn't lead to fluency.
He argues it only trains something he calls the monitor.
The monitor, that little editor in your head.
That's it, the internal editor that's checking your grammar before you speak. But the monitor is slow. It only works when you're focused on the rule, you know the rule, and this is the big one, you have enough time.
Which you never have in a real spontaneous conversation.
Almost never. It's great for writing an essay. It's terrible for chatting over coffee. So if you spend all your time just drilling grammar, you're building a great editor, but a very weak engine for spontaneous speech.
Wow. Okay, so this focus on subconscious acquisition leads directly to his other big idea, the effective filter hypothesis.
The effective filter is basically an emotional wall. The hypothesis states that you acquire language best when you're relaxed, motivated, and self-confident.
And if you're not, if you're anxious or stressed,
When the effective filter goes up, it's like a shield that blocks the comprehensible input from getting into the part of your brain that acquires language. You might hear the words physically, but they don't get processed. They don't stick.
so it's a psychological roadblock, not an intellectual one.
That's it, exactly. Your emotional state is paramount. And this insight led to methodologies like the natural approach, which was developed by Terrell and Krashen.
What are the core principles of the natural approach?
Three main things. First, the focus is always on communication, on meaning, not on grammar for its own sake. Second, you never force someone to speak. Speech has to emerge naturally.
And third,
And third, you let the learner go through natural stages. First is a comprehension stage where they just listen and respond non-verbally. Then early speech with single words or short phrases. And finally, speech emergence, where they can start doing more complex things like role plays.
so you wait for the language to come out on its own.
You have to. And this whole philosophy, high input, low filter mastery, is the driving force behind another method we found in the sources, TPR storytelling, or TPRS.
TPRS, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling.
Yes, it's a really robust grassroots movement. The central idea is to strictly limit how much new stuff you introduce, maybe 3 new words or structures per lesson, and you make sure they are deeply, deeply internalized before you move on.
And the key technique for doing that without just boring students to tears is something called circling. How does that work?
Circling is, well, it's kind of brilliant. It's a way to get massive amounts of repetition in a way that feels like a conversation. The teacher introduces a new phrase in a simple story and then asks a whole series of questions about that one statement.
Can you give us an example? Let's walk through it.
Sure, let's use the classic example. The teacher says, Dave wants a Ferrari. Now the circling starts. First, simple yes-no questions. Class, does Dave want a Ferrari?
Yes.
Yes, he does. Does Dave want a bicycle?
No.
No, he doesn't want a bicycle. Dave wants a Ferrari. Okay, that's 4 repetitions already.
I see.
Then you move to either-or questions. Does Dave want a Ferrari or does he want a Mini Cooper? A Ferrari. That's right. He doesn't want a Mini Cooper. Then what questions? Who wants a Ferrari?
Dave.
Dave does. What does Dave want?
A Ferrari.
A Ferrari. And you just keep going like that, mixing it up, personalizing it. Do you want a Ferrari? By the end of a few minutes, that phrase, wants a Ferrari, has been repeated dozens of times, but it just felt like a fun, simple chat.
And I could see how that would keep the anxiety, that affective filter, incredibly low.
And it applies to grammar, too. They use something called pop-up grammar.
Which is?
You explain a grammar point in 5 seconds or less, and then you jump right back into the story. So if a past tense verb comes up, you might say, hey, notice that ed ending. That means past tense. Okay, so then what happened?
It's just enough to draw conscious attention to the rule before letting the subconscious acquisition process take over again.
Exactly. It's a very elegant balance. And this all leads to a final, crucial principle, the freedom to fail.
Meaning that making mistakes is actually good for you.
It's more than good. It's beneficial. The psychological research is really clear on this. Making an error actually activates a greater network of knowledge in your brain than getting it right the first time.
So struggling and failing is actually a better way to learn than playing it safe.
It leads to superior long-term retention. And in the classroom, this means the teacher's priority has to be communication, not perfect accuracy. So corrective feedback has to be non-obstructive.
Okay, give us an example. What's obstructive versus non-obstructive feedback?
Okay, so a learner says, I go swimming last night. The obstructive filter-raising response is, no, wrong, past tense, say I went swimming.
Right, that just shuts the student down.
Completely. The non-obstructive response is to reply to the meaning and just model the correct form. You'd say, oh, you went swimming. Cool, what did you do after that?
So you keep the conversation going, you validate what they said, and you just slip the correct input in there for their brain to acquire.
Precisely. The goal isn't to police grammar, it's to facilitate communication. That's a profound shift.
Okay, so we've seen how the external environment is critical for lowering that affective filter. Now we have to turn inward and look at the biggest internal barrier of all, anxiety.
The technical term is xenoglossophobia. It's the apprehension, the tension, the worry that's specifically associated with performing in a second language. And it's a huge factor, especially for adult learners.
The research breaks it down into 3 distinct types of anxiety. Let's start with the most internal one.
That would be trait anxiety. This is a stable, persistent part of someone's personality. A tendency to experience negative emotions. It's often internal, maybe even genetic. It's the person who feels anxious in almost any situation.
So it's not about the language class, it's about them.
Right. Then you have state anxiety. This is temporary situational apprehension. It's that feeling you get right before you have to give a presentation. It's a normal response to a perceived threat, and it passes.
And the third one is the one that's most relevant to us.
That's situation-specific anxiety. This is anxiety that's only triggered by specific language-related tasks. Being called on in class, taking a test, speaking in front of people.
Now, some people say a little bit of pressure can be good, that it helps you focus. Does the research back that up?
Not at all. The evidence is overwhelming. Language anxiety has a clearly debilitative role in learning. It is the single most powerful negative predictor of performance.
More powerful than aptitude.
More powerful than aptitude or even your previous achievement. It creates a vicious cycle. You have a bad experience, your anxiety goes up, which ensures your next performance will be worse, which raises your anxiety even more.
That moves us out of theory and into, well, clinical reality. And we have this powerful case study of an adult learner that really illustrates this. Tell us about the student, new one.
Nguyen was a 36-year-old adult learner, highly motivated, but he had a lot of baggage. He'd failed English exams in the past, had really unpleasant memories of old classes. And the most striking thing was he stayed completely silent in his new class for 8 months.
8 months. That is a fortress-like effective filter. What were the specific symptoms they observed when he was put under any kind of linguistic pressure?
Whenever he was asked to speak English, especially in public, he showed signs of severe distress. We're talking visible, perspiring, wet palms, constantly rubbing his hands, even trembling. This wasn't just nerves, it was a severe physical reaction.
He had all three types of anxiety.
He did. He showed clear signs of trait anxiety, the persistent fear. He had severe class anxiety. And the situation-specific anxiety was on full display during a required presentation.
What happened?
The moment he had to perform, it was triggered. He started stammering, went completely speechless for several seconds. When he did speak, it was so quiet, no one could hear him. He was literally looking at the researcher for help.
Wow. That's just a painful validation of the effector filter in action. The input was there, but his internal state made it completely inaccessible.
It really drives home that you have to address the learner's emotional state first. Which brings us to the strategies for creating what the sources call an anxiolytic and anxiety-reducing classroom.
So what are the recommendations? What can a teacher do?
Well, first and foremost, create a supportive, friendly, stress-free environment where errors are seen as a good thing, as a sign of progress.
Freedom to fail.
Exactly. And in terms of methods, you have to avoid activities that provoke anxiety, like putting someone on the spot. Instead, you use personalized lessons. And most importantly, you use progressive exposure.
So you start with easier, safer tasks and gradually build up to more public ones, desensitizing the learner to their fears.
You're helping them build confidence step by step. Now, if anxiety is the resistance, motivation is the fuel.
Right. So let's shift to the positive drivers. How do we define motivation in this context?
Motivation is the internal process that activates, guides, and maintains your behavior over the long haul. It's what makes you eager to learn and willing to put in the time.
And the research identifies 4 main types.
We can group them in 2 pairs. First is the reward, internal or external. Intrinsic motivation is for the pure joy of it. You just love learning. That leads to the highest achievement.
And its opposite.
Extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
That's for an external reward, a good grade, a certificate, avoiding punishment.
And the second pair is about goals, right?
Right. Instrumental motivation is for a practical goal, getting a better job, passing a required exam. But integrative motivation is sociocultural. It's the desire to communicate with native speakers, to be part of that community, to integrate into the culture.
And based on the research from Gardner, which one is the more powerful long-term engine?
Hands down, integrative motivation. That deep desire to connect and integrate is a far more sustainable driver than just trying to pass a test.
That makes perfect sense. A test is a one-time goal. Once it's over, the motivation can just evaporate.
Exactly. And that motivation isn't static. It changes over time, which the process-oriented period model shows us through 3 phases.
What are the phases?
First is the pre-actional stage. That's where you generate the motivation, the decision. I'm going to learn French. Then comes the actional stage, where you have to maintain it through all the hard work.
And the last stage is the most important for the future.
The post-actional stage. This is your self-assessment. You look back at your efforts and results.
And why is that so critical?
Because it's the feedback loop. If you feel like you failed, I studied for 6 months and I still can't understand anything, you're way less likely to re-engage in the future. But if you have positive experiences, even small ones, it reinforces your desire to keep going.
So, anxiety blocks the input, and a lack of integrative motivation means you never even seek out the input in the first place. This brings us right to the adult learner who has to manage all of this while also managing, well, life.
And we have to acknowledge just how challenging adult learning is. You're not a traditional student. You're balancing education with a full-time job, family, finances. It's a constant struggle.
It's the ultimate time and attention deficit. And a recent project, A-Learn, used advanced AI to essentially listen in on the unfiltered feelings of these adult learners.
Right. A-Learn was a project from the Singapore University of Social Sciences. Their goal was to use customized large language models, LLMs, to get a real, raw look at adult learner sentiment.
And the key word there is customized, right? They didn't just use a generic chatbot.
No, because general models don't understand the specific jargon or the mixed emotions of someone talking about work-study balance. They needed to train the model on domain-specific data.
So where did they get all this specialized data?
They scraped over 55,000 comments from Reddit, Twitter, and Tumblr. They searched for keywords like adult learning, part-time studies, work study. It gave them a huge volume of real-time, unfiltered feedback.
Labeling 55,000 comments by hand sounds like an impossible task.
It would be. So they used a really clever hybrid approach. They had a general LLM, GPT 3.5, do the first pass, labeling all the comments as positive, negative, or neutral. Then, human experts only had to verify a small sample of 300 comments for quality control.
That's a great shortcut. Use the AI for scale and the humans for accuracy.
And it worked. The final customized A-Learn model achieved up to 91.3% accuracy,
Wow.
which was a 20% improvement over the baseline model, which was already specialized for social media data.
The 20% jump is huge. It proves that the unique language of adult learners, the slang, the shorthand, the specific anxieties, was being missed by the general models.
That's the big takeaway. The model needed to be deeply adapted to understand this specific domain.
The research also uncovered a really important pitfall, right? They tried to supplement their data with AI-generated comments. What happened?
This is a massive finding. When they asked the AI to generate a negative comment about returning to school and then use that synthetic data to train the model, the accuracy actually dropped by over 15%.
So the fake data made the model worse. Why?
Because the AI-generated comments were too perfect. They were grammatically correct, clearly negative, but they didn't have the informal, messy, slang-filled nature of real human comments on social media.
That's a huge warning for AI research. The synthetic data failed to capture the authentic voice.
It's the same principle as authentic input for human learners. Messiness is essential for both humans and algorithms. So A-Learn used its fine-tuned model to visualize the core concerns of adult learners.
Let's break that down. What were the biggest drivers of negative sentiment? What's raising their effective filter?
It was overwhelmingly about personal and domestic challenges. The biggest words in the negative word cloud were time job, family vacation, family time. It confirms that the constant balancing act is the single biggest source of stress.
So for an adult, the effective filter isn't just self-doubt about the language. It's the real-world structural pressure of not having enough time or money.
Exactly. They also saw anxiety about age, am I old enough, or too old, and financial pressure, make money.
What about the positive feelings? What were the drivers that kept them going?
The positive side was all about professional development, efficiency, and persistence. You saw phrases like work smarter, work hard, and the word every day was really prominent, reinforcing that idea of consistency.
That everyday idea speaks directly to the adult learner's schedule. It's not about finding a 3-hour block on a Saturday. It's about finding 15 minutes every single day.
Absolutely. And they also highlighted the power of open source tools. Khan Academy was specifically mentioned as being highly effective. It shows that adults are actively looking for flexible, affordable, high-quality resources that fit their lives.
So A-Learn really brings it all together. It's using cutting-edge tech to validate these decades-old psychological theories.
It connects all the dots. It shows that the learner's emotional state is still the dominant factor, but for adults, that state is heavily dictated by their real-world socioeconomic situation. #outro.
This has been a massive deep dive. We've gone from time-scaling algorithms and the acoustics of the schwa all the way to the internal pressures of a silent student and the anxieties voiced across social media. Let's try to synthesize the key takeaways for you, the learner.
I think the big picture is that language success isn't about one trick. It's a synergy. First, you have to use the technology, or at least the concepts behind it, to help you perceive how native speakers actually talk, with all the blurs and shortcuts.
Second, you have to prioritize acquisition over learning. That means finding input that is comprehensible, authentic, and genuinely compelling to you. And you have to embrace that freedom to fail, knowing that mistakes are actually a sign that your brain is working hard.
And third, you have to manage that effective filter. And for adults, that means acknowledging the real-world constraints. The stress of time, your job, your family, that has to be part of your learning plan. The most successful adult learners find a way to learn every day, even for a few minutes, and they leverage efficient tools.
Ultimately, we've seen that the best predictor of success isn't just raw intelligence. It's your ability to stay motivated and resilient.
And what's so fascinating is that while anxiety is debilitating, positive experiences and strong integrative motivation are the antidote. You really get to choose the fuel for your engine.
So as you go out and choose what to read or watch or listen to in your target language,
Uh-huh.
maybe stop asking yourself that instrumental question, will this help me pass my next test?
That instead start asking the integrative question. Does this activity genuinely make me want to connect with this culture? Do I actually enjoy this? Because that desire, that inner pleasure, fundamentally, that is the most powerful and sustainable engine for actually acquiring a language.